Welcome to the Football Film Room Show. I'm Nick Kehoe, and we've got another great episode for you today. We're going to go through all the action from the Divisional Round. I'll be honest, we're going to spend the most amount of time on that Bills-Broncos game because, while the Divisional Round is always very consequential, it was even more so for the Bills. Not only did their season come to a heartbreaking end again, but Sean McDermott was fired less than 48 hours after the game. Now, we'll get into that decision. We'll get into why that decision probably had to be made. But first, I want to talk about Josh Allen and the commentary around him coming out of this game, because I watched the live broadcast, then I watched an all 22 the next day, and what I saw just, I don't know, it just did not match up with what I was hearing on NFL analysis shows, Twitter, of course, because I think Allen played a pretty damn good game. You're probably not hearing that in many places, but he made a ton of plays, a ton of throws. He ended up with roughly 350 total yards, 3 touchdowns, had several big-time throws, big-time decisions. There was a third down where he threw the ball with such great anticipation, his receiver turned around and the ball was pretty much in his face, had no choice but to catch it. He had one play to Shakir where he threw smoke and it ended up being a touchdown. That's where it's basically a designed run play, and the quarterback has the ability to throw the ball to the backside if he likes the matchup. Allen did a great job there of recognizing what was going on, standing up quickly and throwing a quick slant to Shakir. Had another RPO where, again, he made a quick snap decision right after the snap, hit Shakir for 40-plus yards. Had a big run with his legs, made a bunch of plays. And at the end of the day, when you score 30 points, your team should win. When you score 30 points and lose, that game is not on the offense. When you score 13 points in the fourth quarter, including a go-ahead touchdown drive and then a last-second game-tying field goal drive, it's really tough to put that game on the quarterback. Now, were there throws and plays that Josh Allen would like back? Of course. He ended up with 4 turnovers. I thought 2 of them were on him. The play before the end of the half where he was running around completely reckless with the ball. It looked like on the broadcast he was trying to lateral it, but then if you watch it on film, it almost looks like he was glancing towards the sideline to see if he could get out of bounds to stop the clock. And then he got hit and his hand got knocked backwards, so it almost looked like he was shoveling it backwards, and maybe he was. Either way, way too reckless with the ball in that situation. That gave Denver 3 points. The other turnover that was on him was the interception in the third quarter, where he threw the ball deep and just didn't get enough on it. But the other 2 turnovers, one was a sack fumble where he basically planted his back foot and got hit right as he was throwing it. And then the interception, the last play that everyone's talking about, those 2 really weren't on him. On the sack, he was setting the protection at the line. He saw the blitz. He had James Cook go up and hang out right behind the center in the right A-gap so they could pick up the pressure look that Denver was showing them. There were one-on-ones across the board. To the left, they had Nick Bonito, and Shakir was kind of right off of the left tackle, ran a little bit of interference on Bonito, and then Deion Dawkins just still couldn't even get to him. Didn't even get a hand on Bonito, and he basically had a free rush in on Allen when, on paper, it was supposed to be picked up. The final play, the throw to Brandon Cooks, I mean, that was an outstanding throw. Threw it, 40, 50 yards downfield? The ball hit Brandon Cooks in the right shoulder pad, and people are still arguing over whether or not it was a catch. Now, I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to open up that can of worms of what's a catch, what's not a catch. Whether he had possession of the ball and 2 feet on the ground and was being touched down, or whether he didn't survive the ground, whatever it is, the point I'm making here is that for the second straight year, the Bills season ended with Josh Allen's last pass hitting his receiver in the shoulder pads or the hands, and that receiver not coming down with it. Now, of course, there were other throws that Allen missed. I think right before they kicked the game-tying field goal, he had Dawson Knox for a touchdown, threw the ball a little bit high, just missed him. I think it was because of the pressure that happened, but of course that's one he wants back. The play right before the throw to Brandon Cooks, he hit Mecole Hardman, who was running kind of a corner route. I don't know if Allen just misfired or thought that Hardman was going to flatten the route, and Hardman kept going upfield with it. Whatever it was, Hardman got his hands on it. Could have caught it. I won't say he should have caught it. He could have caught it. Allen could have made a better throw, or they could have been on the same page a little bit better. But those are throws he absolutely wants back to go along with the turnovers. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Allen played a perfect game, but he made a ton of throws, a ton of plays. And while there are plays that he definitely wants back, We're only talking about it because the Bills lost. Every single quarterback, no matter what type of performance they have a handful of plays every single game at least where they didn't like the decision they make, didn't like the throw they made, wish they had done something differently. But we don't talk about it if the team wins. Do you think Drake May, who went 16 of 27 for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns, but had 3 turnovers and 4 fumbles, do you think he wants any of his plays back against the Texans? Do you think he wish he made any different decisions? Of course he does. We're not going to talk about it because the Patriots won. You think Matthew Stafford, who completed less than 50% of his passes and threw for only 258 yards, no touchdowns, no picks against the Bears, do you think there's a handful of throws that he wants back? Of course there are. But the Rams won, so we don't have to talk about it. Those 2 quarterbacks led their offenses to 21 points and 20 points, respectively. Josh Allen led his team to 30 points. Not every game is the same, but all I'm saying is that the quarterback alone cannot win games. You can even look at Sam Darnold. He was, 12 of 17 for 124 yards and a touchdown? Who added more value to their team in their performance? I really think the only quarterback you can say probably had a better game than Josh Allen was Bo Nix. But there were a handful of throws he wanted back too. Again, we're not talking about it. The Broncos won. The point I'm making here is this. It sounds cliche, but you don't win without a great team. You don't win football games. You don't win championships. You don't win multiple playoff games without having a great team. Multiple ways of winning. Oh, the quarterback has a bad game this week? Well, we still won because the defense picked up the slack. Next week, the quarterback goes off, and he picks up the slack for the defense. You don't believe me? That's fine. Tom Brady and Joe Montana, they have 11 rings between them. Not once in those 11 seasons did they have a defense that was worse than 8th in scoring. In 2 of Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowl wins, his offense scored just 13 points. That's the lowest total in Super Bowl history for any winning team, and he did it twice. Joe Montana played in 6 conference championship games with the 49ers. In 4 of those, his defense did not allow a touchdown. You have to have a team around the quarterback to win championships. You have to have a defense that makes plays. You have to have a defense that can at least keep the game close. You have to have a defense that occasionally can shut down another team, that can make a stop at the end of games, that can play good situational football. But it's for that reason that the Bills lost once again, and Sean McDermott is no longer the head coach. The Bills under McDermott had defensive failure after defensive failure in the playoffs, and that's why they couldn't advance, no matter how well Josh Allen played or didn't play. This year, they allowed 33 points to the Broncos. Last year, it was the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. They allowed 32 points to an offense that really struggled all year. The year before that, it was 27 to the Chiefs, again, to an offense that wasn't rolling on all cylinders. And it would have been more points if Mecole Hardman hadn't fumbled the ball on the goal line in the fourth quarter. The year before that, 27 points again to the Bengals. The year before that, they allowed 42 points to the Chiefs. Lost that game 42-36 in overtime. The year before that, allowed 38 points to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game with a defensive head coach. And it wasn't just the overall defensive performances in all those games that the Bills lost. It was their inability to manage end-of-game situations, crucial situations, to play good situational football. I've said this a bunch over the last few weeks. I've talked about how different teams have done well or not done well playing situational football. I apologize if you're tired of hearing it, but I'm going to keep talking about it because that can make the biggest difference. That's how you have upset wins. That's how you win football games against other really good teams. And the Bills have just botched too many of those types of situations. We can go all the way back to 2019. That was Josh Allen's first playoff game. The Bills were in Houston playing the Texans. Not only did they blow a 16-0 lead in the second half, but when they were in overtime, the Texans faced a 3rd and 18 in their own territory. Deshaun Watson was able to dump the ball off to his running back, and he was able to catch the ball and easily run for the first down. He didn't have like a Bo Jackson type run either. This wasn't like this guy caught the ball and then hurdled a couple defenders and stiff-armed another and then trucked another defender to get the first down. He really was able to get it without much resistance. And this was on a play where it was 3rd and 18. The Bills decided they were going to be passive. They rushed 3, dropped 8, and a few players on the defense did not have good spatial awareness, didn't have good situational awareness, didn't know where the first down marker was. They kind of lost themselves. Texans ended up getting a first down. They would go on to kick the game-winning field goal. Fast forward to 2021, Chiefs-Bills divisional round. 13 seconds. This is the one that every Bills fan remembers. In what was a absolutely unbelievable back-and-forth game between the Bills and Chiefs and Mahomes and Allen, Josh Allen finally put the Bills ahead 36-33 with 13 seconds remaining. They should have won the game right then and there, but then the Bills made a bunch of critical mistakes in their decision-making and on special teams and on their defense, beginning with the decision to kick the ball into the end zone for a touchback and not take any time off the clock. And then they allowed the Chiefs to cover 44 yards on 2 plays and only take 10 seconds off the clock, setting up a really easy game-tying field goal. And it was just another one of those situations where the defense they played was ultra passive, allowed receivers to get free releases off the line, allowed Patrick Mahomes to plant his back foot and get the ball out immediately, seemingly didn't take into account the clock, didn't have a strategy deployed to force the Chiefs to run time off the clock. And we all know what happened. The Chiefs kicked the game-tying field goal. They won the coin toss and overtime, scored a touchdown. Game over, season over. And then you had this past week. Now, this one won't go down quite as obviously of a blunder. The Bills led 27-23. About 2.5 minutes to go. Broncos had the ball, faced a 3rd and 11. The Bills ended up playing a coverage where they started in single high. They were trying to disguise. Ended up playing a non-traditional Tampa 2. Cole Bishop, who was the deep safety to start the play, ended up dropping down to become the hook defender. He would have been in the throwing lane where Bo Nix ended up throwing the ball, but he ended up jumping a receiver at the line of scrimmage who was breaking to the flat. Now, that's one of those situations where you do not react to receivers below the quote-unquote, the no-cover zone. There's an area of the field in certain situations where when you're figuring out who to match up to, which routes to react to, when you're playing zone coverage, you don't respond to any routes below that line. You stay in position. You hold your ground. You mind the first down line. And Bishop didn't do it here. He broke for the flat. There was no need for him to do that. Nix threw the ball right behind him for a big completion, and the Broncos would go on to score a touchdown on that drive. But that's just another example of poor situational football. And now you can blame the player all you want, but we've seen too many instances where the individual players continue to have these blunders. And all that can indicate to you is that situational football is not something that's emphasized on the team. It's not something that's drilled enough. It's not something that's talked about enough. Because if it was, you would not have these types of situations happening over and over and over again. And ultimately, that's why McDermott had to go. It kept happening year after year. And it's really hard to believe that something different is going to happen in year 10 when it hasn't in the first 9. That being said, that wasn't the only reason the Bills' defense didn't play well in this game. I think the biggest reason was the pass rush, or lack thereof. They only ended up pressuring Bo Nix on a quarter of his dropbacks. He dropped back 50 times, by the way. They had 0 sacks. And that's really what allowed him to have the time to navigate some of those downfield passing concepts that the Broncos were calling. In particular, on those 3rd and long situations, of which there were 7 during the game, there were multiple plays, 3 times where the Bills dropped out into zone, just rushed 4, and every single time, Bo Nix was able to find a receiver downfield behind those second-level defenders or in between those second-level defenders and hit his receiver. Now, they had 2 first downs on 3rd and longs, including the one I just mentioned with Cole Bishop. That was the 3rd and 11 at the end of the game. And then they had another one where the receiver dropped the pass. And this is just one of the things I didn't like about McDermott's approach in this game. In those big situations, in those 3rd and longs, and particularly on that 3rd and 11 at the end of the game, to that point, you had not gotten a pass rush. And already, multiple times before that, on a 3rd and long, it didn't matter how many guys you dropped into coverage. Nix was able to hit his back foot, hitch a couple times, and find his receiver and hit him for a completion or a near completion. And so on that play, I would have liked to see the Bills be more aggressive. With your season on the line, you're not going to win in the playoffs just by being passive. You're not going to win in the playoffs by just hoping that somebody makes a play. You need to force the issue a bit. And that's especially true considering that the Bills were not getting pressure when they rushed just 4, and were actually having a little bit more success when they brought blitzes. The blitzes were making Nix a little bit frenetic in the pocket, making him react a little bit more, get rid of the ball a little bit earlier than he would have otherwise liked to. And so in that situation, not necessarily your season on the line, but pretty much the big play of the season, 3rd and 11. If you can get a stop there, make it 4th and 11, you're in really good shape. And they decided to play it soft. They decided to play it passive, just like they did in 2021 against the Chiefs, just like they did in 2019 against the Texans, and many other times like that before. And you can call this after-the-fact analysis. You can say that I just have access to the results. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying, but you need to put pressure on the other team to make plays. And too many times in this game and throughout McDermott's tenure, the Bills just didn't, particularly on defense. All right, we can move on to the rest of these games, and we'll do this a little bit more round-robin style, just some quick thoughts on each of the games. 49ers Seahawks. The Seahawks won in every single phase. They took what they did a couple weeks ago in Week 18 and just doubled down, just kicked the ever-loving you-know-what out of the 49ers. On the defensive side of the ball, they were able to pressure Brock Purdy a ton in that Week 18 game. They upped that significantly on Saturday night. They pressured Purdy on 60% of his dropbacks, and they really did it with their front four. They blitzed on just 4 of 33 dropbacks and continued to play that coverage the way they've been playing it. Keep everything in front of them, move after the snap, and they completely shut down the 49ers. Forced 3 turnovers, and that really was the story of the weekend, I think, in every single game. Broncos won the turnover battle 5-1. Seahawks won the turnover battle 3-0. Patriots won the turnover battle 5-3. And then the Rams won the turnover battle 3-0 as well. On the other side of the ball, the Seahawks didn't have to do much through the air, which was probably good because Sam Darnold's oblique, but really they were able to do anything they wanted to in the run game, just like they did in Week 18. In particular, they attacked the edge of the 49ers defense. They were able to run the ball 21 times for 130 yards outside the tackles. And that was an issue that the 49ers have had for a while, and the Seahawks exploited it in Week 18 and exploited it again on Saturday night. So right now, they look like the hottest, most complete team, and when you talk complete teams, you have to include special teams. Obviously started off the game with a kick return touchdown, but they were playing good football. They've got a great home field advantage, and that's going to be a tough place for the Rams to go and win. Even though the Rams went in there and probably should have won that game towards the end of the regular season, that Thursday night classic game that the Rams blew at the end with, again, bad situational football. It's going to be hard for them to go in the way the Seahawks are playing and come out with a victory. Patriots-Texans, this was a game that made you want to burn your eyeballs out. Was not particularly enjoyable to watch. Just sloppy football by both offenses. Terrible operation by the Texans. We'll get to C.J. Stroud and the Texans offense in a second, but this was a game that, for the second week in a row, was there for the taking for the visiting team because the Patriots offense could not consistently move the ball. The Texans defense held them to under 250 yards, 3.9 yards per play, had 5 sacks, held them to 3 of 14 on 3rd down, and then had 3 turnovers, 2 more fumbles that I don't know how the Texans didn't recover those balls. It could have been 5 turnovers, and those 2 sack fumbles that they couldn't fall on top of, those could have changed the game drastically had they done so. But unfortunately for them, they didn't. And on the other side of the ball, the Patriots defense was equally as devastating. For the second straight week, they just dominated in the trenches. And one of the things about Mike Vrabel that I really love is that when he senses that there's blood in the water, he goes after that team. You saw it with the Chargers last week, and then you saw it on Sunday against the Texans. They probably didn't need to blitz to get pressure on Stroud that often, but once they saw how shaky he was playing, once they saw how uncomfortable he was, they really started to dial up the pressure and just kept coming after him and coming after him and coming after him. And that was as big a reason for their success as anything. Their blitz percentage during the regular season was somewhere in the 25% range, and in both playoff games, it's been over 40. So they've really turned it on once playoff football has begun. And you know, we'll find out this week if it was a matchup thing or how exactly they're going to play the Broncos, because the Broncos do have a very good offensive line and have been great in pass protection this year, but they're also starting Jarrett Stidham, and maybe Vrabel will use some pressure to try to get him to be uneasy. We'll see. But speaking of uneasy, C.J. Stroud, so much of what he did was self-inflicted. I think all 4 interceptions you can put on him. The first one, the ball sailed. I don't know if he just missed the throw or I kind of can't explain how the ball came out of his hand or why it came out the way it did, but a wildly inaccurate pass when they were in Patriots territory and potentially threatening to score. His second interception was when the Texans had the most control of the game. And this was really where the tide turned. The Texans were clearly stopping the Patriots' offense. They had a 10-7 lead, had just forced the Patriots to punt. And the first play coming out of that break, they do a play-action boot to the left. An offensive lineman gets knocked into the tight end who's motioning across. That makes him fall down. He was C.J. Stroud's first read, I think. Then Stroud decided to play hero ball. And with a defender in his face, he tried to throw the ball at the intermediate level. And that's just one of those plays where you have to eat it. I know it's not ideal. It would have been second and forever, and you'd probably end up punting. But right then and there, you're in control of the game. It's 10-7. You have that defense, which is doing exactly what everyone expected them to be doing. And you gave away the game. You can't do that. And I honestly thought after the way he played last week against the Steelers that, okay, that's good. He got it out of his system, and clearly they're going to drum into his head all week, hey, you know what our defense is, right? You know how good they are. It's probably better if we just kneel 3 times than for you to take any sort of chance that would turn the ball over and flip the field or to give the other team 6 points. But Stroud clearly didn't either receive that message or he did and just ignored it or forgot about it. I don't know. I can't explain why you would go into a game like that where both defenses are really good and your defense is arguably the best in the league, and you would go and be so careless with the football. That pick six was absolutely inexcusable given the time of the game. It was first down. I mean, here's the other thing. Your tight end's down on the ground. Throw the ball at him. Do a little sidearm, throw the ball at his feet. Incompletion, 2nd and 10. Live to play another day. But he didn't do that. His decision-making in this one was absolutely atrocious. His third interception on the very next drive, this was a play where it hit his receiver's hands, but cold, rainy, wet day, you can't be throwing the ball over the middle high like that. It was not an especially accurate throw. Yes, his receiver got his hands on it, but those are the throws you have to put on your receiver's body, especially in that type of weather game. And then the fourth interception, again, rolling out to his left. I don't think there was a point in the play where the receiver he was throwing to was open. Throw the ball away. I mean, they had chances in this game. They had chances to put points on the board, whether it was field goals, whether it was touchdowns. They hurt themselves. C.J. Stroud killed themselves, but you know what? The entire operation was bad. You, of course, had the fumble by the running back, Woody Marks, when the Texans had a chance to put more points on the board in the third quarter and get that game tighter and tighter. You had a touchdown taken off the board because of an illegal shift on the goal line, so they had to settle for a field goal. They had to burn timeouts because they weren't getting the play in on time. I mean, it was a complete cluster from the beginning of the game, from a play calling standpoint, an operational standpoint, an execution standpoint. The Texans looked like this was their first time in the playoffs, and I've never seen one game make you question if a quarterback can be your quarterback of the future as much as this one did. C.J. Stroud, I think we were all secure in, he's the Texans quarterback. He had that great rookie season, and then he had the next 2 years where he clearly regressed. But I think a lot of that could have been chalked up to, the offensive line was not good in year 2, wasn't great this year either. Also had a new offensive coordinator this year who was battling injuries. I think you could say all that about Stroud from these past 2 seasons and say, all right, he's being a quarterback. It's not a linear progression. You have good years, you go down, the league catches up to you, then you have to adjust. It goes up and down until you start to ascend consistently. But this was a game that it's the decision-making that had me so troubled. Like, how do you not know going into that game and throughout the course of that game that, hey, you're actually better off if you punt just about every single time in this game? There's a stat floating around Twitter that is kind of amazing, but C.J. Stroud's passer rating in this game, I think, was a 28, something in that range. He would have had a higher passer rating if he just took the ball and spiked it into the ground on every single pass play. Now, it doesn't really mean anything, but it's illustrative of how poorly he played and just the lack of situational awareness. I told you I was going to be mentioning situational awareness a lot, especially in the playoffs, but this is another example of that. You have to play to the team that you have. You have to play to the situations in the game, and when you have a defense that was as dominant as the Texans were this season and even in this game, and you just give it away like C.J. Stroud did, it does make you question everything. It makes you question everything because mentally, what's going on there? Decision-making is one of the most important things, if not the most important things about playing the quarterback position. This was a game that had such an obvious situational mindset that you had to be in. There was one way to play this game, and he clearly wasn't aware of how to do it. And that's concerning if you're the Texans. Now, the final game of the weekend kind of saved us all as football fans, helped wash the taste out of our mouth from that Patriots-Texans game. Oh, that was ugly. But we got another thriller, which shouldn't surprise anyone considering you had Matthew Stafford and Caleb Williams, two of the best quarterbacks in the league at the ends of games. And we'll get to the stuff at the end, but obviously both quarterbacks didn't play particularly well. I thought Stafford missed some throws. He didn't look sharp. He didn't look crisp. But Caleb Williams ended up making more crucial mistakes. Had 3 interceptions. The first interception was on a 4th down on their opening drive where he had an open receiver. I know it was a tight window, but the guy he was throwing it to, you gotta throw it lower. You got to put it on his body. But they had a chance on that one, and obviously if you convert there, you've got a chance of scoring. Unfortunately, they didn't. The ball sailed. Rams came up with an interception, and the Bears came away with no points on the board. His next interception, this was an example of not seeing the field clearly, not seeing ahead of the throw. The Rams sort of spun out into a Tampa 2 look. And I don't think Williams didn't recognize the 2 safeties deep. I think he saw them. The route combination he had, there was a corner route coming from his number 2 receiver to the right. And I think what he was doing is he was basing his decision to throw off of that receiver's leverage on the safety, on one of the 2 deep safeties. And his receiver did have leverage. The problem was in that coverage, there's a corner sitting in the flat there. And he has the responsibility to provide cushion to that safety and get underneath that corner route. And that's the thing that I think Caleb Williams didn't necessarily recognize. And this is what disguise does. This is why you disguise. It's not that you're going to completely fool a quarterback. But what can happen is that when defenders move, it makes it tough for the quarterback to kind of be aware of every single defender and where they are. And on this particular play, Williams made the right decision based on if it was just a one-on-one between the safety and his receiver running the corner route, but he didn't make the right decision based on the fact that it was Tampa 2 coverage and there was a corner that was going to be sitting there, and that's the guy who made the interception. He was able to undercut the throw, and another drive was stopped early. Now, luckily for them, the defense held. The Bears' defense actually came to play last night in a way that I thought they would not. Maybe it was the weather, but they were able to hold the Rams without scoring any points on that drive. So it didn't end up killing the Bears. But I think that was kind of the story of the game for Caleb. He didn't see the field extremely well. On their 4th down late in the 4th quarter, the one where they were stopped before he made the miraculous throw, I think he, again, didn't see ahead of the throw and made an attempt to Luther Burden, but didn't see the defender closing on the window. And look, he saved himself with that miraculous play on 4th down. I don't know how many other players could make a play like that, run about 30 yards backwards like this is Tecmo Super Bowl, and then throw it to the corner of the end zone. That was my move, by the way. I always used to go to one corner of the end zone on one side of the field, throw it 120 yards across the field to a wide-open receiver in the back. But this is real life, and Caleb Williams was able to do that on the biggest play of the season. Now, it didn't end up working out because he threw his 3rd interception in overtime. Can't really put that on him. DJ Moore stopped running his route or didn't flatten it off. It kind of looked like he was jogging. I don't know what exactly he was doing, what he was thinking, but clearly Caleb Williams thought he was going to do something else. The defender did make a great play on it to even come down with the interception, but that was a play that I'm sure he wanted back, that I'm sure DJ Moore wants back. But at the end of the day, Matthew Stafford, who did not play a crisp game, as I was saying earlier, he came through when the team needed him most. As John Facenda would say, great players aren't always great. They're just great when they have to be. Now, whether that's true or not, Stafford, despite struggling all night, led his team on a go-ahead touchdown drive that would have been the game-winning touchdown drive, and then he led them on the game-winning field goal drive with a couple of great throws, including, yes, again, another no-look throw. The throw he made to the sideline that Devontae Adams caught, great catch by Adams, by the way, was another play where Stafford was looking down the middle of the field, kept his head and his eyes that way, and threw across his body to the left sideline. And I think it had an impact on the play. It did kind of hold that underneath defender who was eyeing Stafford and keep him from getting wider where he may have been able to make a play on the throw. Instead, Stafford was able to lay it up over him. Another no-look throw in a crucial, critical situation. Devontae Adams makes the great catch, and then the Rams were in business. And then they had a third down later in that same drive where, again, Stafford recognized the blitz, got the ball out quickly to Puka Nacua, and the Rams would go on to kick the game-winning field goal. This was Stafford's 55th game-winning drive of his career, which is remarkable. But on top of that, this is why the Rams went out and traded for him. This is why they wanted him over Jared Goff, because he can make throws that other quarterbacks can't make. He is calm under pressure and great at the end of games. In fact, he's now 7-2 in the playoffs with the Rams, and in 5 of those 7 wins, Stafford has led the Rams on a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter or overtime. Impressive stuff, really. And I'm really looking forward to that Rams-Seahawks game. I think the Seahawks are playing much better right now, but the Rams know they can go in and win there. They should have won that game earlier in the season. But either way, it's a great matchup, and I think at very least we can comfortably say that in the NFC, the 2 best teams during the season are meeting for a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and that's exactly what you want. The AFC, I guess you could say the same thing. Maybe not the 2 best quarterbacks. Completely stinks. Just if you're a Broncos fan, if you're an NFL fan, stinks for Bo Nix to have the season he did and the performance he did against the Bills, only to break his foot, be done for the season. Absolutely devastating, but he played a great game against the Bills. His go-ahead touchdown pass late in the fourth quarter to bring the Broncos back from that 27-23 deficit and give them the 3-point lead, it was an unbelievable throw against tight man coverage. So he played well. He played great. He should get to play in the AFC Championship game, but unfortunately it's not to be. Jarrett Stidham will start in his place, and we'll see how it goes. I hope we have a good game. The Broncos defense might be able to keep them in it. Sean Payton, he knows how to win, knows how to move the ball no matter who's playing quarterback, has shown that throughout his career. Will it be enough to get to the Super Bowl? Hard to say it will be, but that's why they play the game. That's it for today's show. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out footballfilmroom.com this week. I will have more content on there breaking down some of the action from Divisional Round weekend, give you some previews of the conference championship games. It's been a long, crazy, wild year. We've only got 3 games left at this point, and I don't know. Something tells me that these 3 are going to be just as wild as the rest of the season's been. But thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.